this music. I love it too. It's really hard to find good music. Thank you, Jared. It's so hard to find good music for this that's royalty free because, if I could, I would certainly support some musician for some playlists like that, but I haven't found the person yet. But yeah, this jazz one's pretty good. I think it doesn't offend or jangle the nerves of everybody, which is good. I love like an upbeat elevator music kind of vibe, this sort of jazzy vibe. Love a little lounge music. I think that's our vibe around here. So happy Monday, you guys. Let's see who's here. Druid, my dearest. Of course, Jill's here. I got off the phone with her a few minutes ago and she said, I'll see you on the stream. Robin, hello. Kate wants to hear about weekend drama. Oh, my girl, you will. And Maradim, hello. So, yeah, I hope you guys had a good weekend. I know Jill had a drama-filled weekend. I was in on some of that drama, and I have a rant for you guys because I was like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to post stuff, and it's always good when I sit and think about my feelings. But I wrote this completely unhinged rant that I knew was going to be like pages and pages too long to post on Facebook. And I think it's not really right and I'll get into the details later. But anyway, because it is part of the title, and I'm going to read you this rant because I think it needs to be said, and it's basically like an open letter to the community. So, and I'm really interested in your thoughts on it. And, oh, Jill, I printed it. It's 8 pages. I did bump the font up because of my eyeballs, So we're gonna get there. It was an insane weekend. I didn't go anywhere. I was on the couch for probably 75% of it, but I got a lot of work done, and I did a lot of things. I've been having insomnia. I think it's one of those, cake has imbalances sometimes. And so I take advantage of being like, it's 3 a.m. I can't sleep. I'm going to do something. So that's kind of what we're going to get into today. So first of all, before I even talk about that, Jill, that's really bad. We need to get out of that. She and I both have been in this really bad habit of late nights and then early mornings, and then it gets you into this cycle, and the early, it's bad. It's not good sleep hygiene. So anyway, we'll get into healthy let's see, New Year healthy tips maybe on Thursday. So it snowed, and I'm not too mad about it because we'll see. My husband's off. Well, he took off today because he can. My son's off today, so he didn't have to commute. And I didn't have anything where I had to go out today. So I'm always happy when things are not like travel and going out and doing things aren't important. And then it snows, and it only snows a few inches. So by tomorrow, the day after, when I really have to do stuff, it's no big deal. It's all gone. But I think south of me, I think they may have really gotten hit bad. I know I talked to my mom very briefly this morning, and she's about 2 hours south of me. And I think she got like twice as much snow as we did. So I'm like, eee. Robin, you wish for more than just a dusting. Yeah, I think sometimes dustings are disappointing because you're like, get a couple inches, like cover the grass. It looks kind of sad when it's just a little, but you can see the grass poking up. So anyway, knocking on wood that this might just be, here's the snow for 2025, and then we can be done with this. So we'll see. As long as it doesn't interfere with any of the plans I have, which I don't think it will. We have to cross our fingers that there will not be a lot of snow in February. So yeah. Turn your pajamas right side in. Is that a thing across the U.S. or in any other places? I know here in Baltimore, they often will do this thing like when they're calling for snow, the newscasters, the meteorologists will say like, "Okay, kids, you need to put your snow boots by the door. You need to turn your pajamas inside out," and they have all this stuff. And I don't remember any of that from when I was a kid, so I don't know if it's like if that's a Baltimore thing or if that's a thing that I just missed out on as a kid because I lived in Virginia and it just did not snow enough in my opinion. We might have one snow day a year. We probably had more hurricane days than we had snow days. Anyway, so yeah, and that's the crazy thing. Jill has only had 2 inches of snow so far all season. In Massachusetts, what you should be like up to your neck by this point, shouldn't you? At least the way New England winters should be going. Those nor'easters and then the lake effect and all that. I don't know that, and I'm not a meteorology person. My husband, he follows the Weather Channel. I think it's a genetic thing because his father is a Weather Channel person. But I just feel like we always, here in the Mid-Atlantic, we get like the nor'easters. They blow down from Canada, or we get some lake effect stuff sometimes that kind of, comes and manages to get over the mountains. But I just can't think of any times when I've looked at like an incoming snowstorm that was like going across the country like this. Because that's essentially what it did. A lot of stuff there in the middle. I know I definitely heard Kentucky. And then Cake's geography's bad. But, all the stuff that's west of Kentucky, like, was just getting slammed there. And I saw some stuff on TV where I was like, oh my God, like, ooh, icy conditions. And then the snow on top of it. It's really rough. Let's see, Druid, thought you were going to get it yesterday, but it was a non-event. Something moving in as we speak, some flurries. Okay, well, yes, a loaf of bread is not to be found. Luckily, I'm not going to say my cupboards are fully stocked, but they were good enough. We had enough toilet paper, enough bread that we could last for a few days. Yeah, I like to just stay prepared in the winter. I hate to do that, like rush to the store. And my mom always said, why you got to have the toilet paper? Because you're going to eat all that bread. Anyway, so in this lead up to this little bit of snow we had, I really fell down the AI rabbit hole. I got to be honest. So if you guys, for those of you that were part of the quilt nerd community with Mary Fonz, you know that in 2022, I think it was just before Christmas, the holiday season 2022, Mary's husband, Eric, is an IT professional. And one day, I think he always tells her about fun things that are coming, out there and things she might be interested in. And he showed her ChatGPT, which had just debuted. And she showed it on her stream to the community. And we were all having fun with it. It was like, oh, show me a quilt with a hedgehog, and it was just crazy stuff. It was insane. And that's kind of in my head the way I've thought about AI. But, I mean, you've probably noticed if you spent any time online, just open Chrome, type of question, you're getting AI back. Like that little thing at the top, that's essentially AI, like giving you, more than just a search result. And Gemini is Google's thing, and I have not played with that. I'm kind of not interested in it right now because it works a little different, and it's not quite there yet. ChatGPT, oh my God, you guys. I did some stuff with it this weekend where I was like, I have 4 GPTs now. I'm training them as if they're people, as if they're employees. I was like, I could really use an assistant, an administrative assistant to just keep my notes for me, organize it, because I'm terrible at that. I will put stuff in files everywhere, and, was that thing on a spreadsheet? Was it a PDF? So I was like, all right. And her name is Eloise Smith, by the way. And I said, Eloise, I am going to need you to make yourself a filing cabinet. And I'm going to need you to start tagging my ideas and make me this to-do list and all this stuff. And she's like, on it. And isn't this crazy, you guys? It took me 0 time at all to start talking about these entities as like they're people. Like I have a really hard time, like when I talk about these GPTs I made, I can't call them it. I can call them them, but otherwise I have assigned genders to them. Like they're people, and I've given them some little personality quirks and asked them to kind of just, go off on that. And then every now and then I need to tell them, like, okay, what you just said to me was bizarre. Or what you just said to me, I see you're mirroring something I said to you, and you're doing it in a way that's weird. And it'll update its memory, and it'll be like, all right, I'm not going to do that anymore, or I will do that in this way that you. And as an example, one of the other GPTs that I created, I was like, hey sis, blah blah blah, just being real slangy. And so she came back. Her name is Caroline, by the way. She came back with blah 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 sis, da 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 sis, and I'm like, you don't have to call me sis every time we talk. I'm not your sister. You're not my sister. I'm using sis as a term of slang, kind of a way of making a point. You can also say, what's up, girl? So I told it that, and then everything that it said to me would have this occasional, you go, girl, kind of stuff. And I was like, this is so strange. It is so bizarre. In some ways, it will become very obvious. Like you say something to it, and it spits it back out at you, like just paraphrased. And you're like, okay, that's very talented of you, but you are just spitting back my words to me. So I see through that. And then sometimes it will say something. I mean, literally one of these GPTs brought me to tears with the things it said to me, which that's a little bit scary, you guys. I mean, I never saw that Joaquin Phoenix movie. Was it called Her or She? Something like that. It was years ago. It came out years ago. I think it was right around the time that it might have been right around the time that people like Apple Siri came out, and people were, hey Sherlock. Oh, we've got some topics that you will get into today. We're talking about AI right now. So I think that movie came out like right around the time people were, Siri was something you could use, and Siri is just a search engine compared to what ChatGPT is now capable of. This current version is very sophisticated. Yes, Sherlock. I bet you do have a bone to pick. I know a lot of people do. And here's what I told my mother this morning. I had a brief conversation with my mother, and I told her what I worked on this weekend. And she's like, I don't understand this stuff. I'm like, it's a lot of people don't. And it's confusing. Exactly what it is, because it's being rapidly integrated. Companies are using this stuff and you don't even know they are. Or there's some little thing about this was, generative AI, and you're like, well, that's not what I asked for. That's not what there is sometimes you're being dragged into some AI without even realizing it. So, there's a lot of issues. I mean, this is the way things happen when things are new. And we're at this point where, social media was, gosh, when did Facebook come on the scene? As like, was it 2007 when Facebook kind of became mainstream? I want to say it coincided maybe with the release of the first iPhone. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like that's where I remember, like, Facebook came out right, it was a college thing first, and then it became mainstream. So we're at a point where there's still a lot of people that are still not comfortable with social media and the way that those communities work online, and we're already leaving that behind from a technology standpoint. So these are things that I think about a lot. And artistically, you guys know all of this is in the name of art. And we'll get to Cult Corner in a moment because I have updates there. But what I told my mom, and this is a way oversimplification, but think of AI as a tool. And it is only as good or as bad as the hand that holds it. So right now, let me qualify that by saying right now. I can have a pencil, and as a tool, I can write with it. I can make notes. I could check. I could draw with it. I could do all kinds of things with this, or I can run up to you and stab you in the eye with it. I mean, that's kind of like the way you have to think about these things. Now, the problem is when we reach singularity and AI is just like, we don't need humans anymore. We're not there yet, so don't worry. We may never be there yet. but I don't know. Oh, Robin. So Robin says Facebook started as a way for college students to connect. Yes. And now the large majority of users are over the age of 50. Yep. And is mostly used to keep in touch with family and friends. Mm-hmm. HAL 2000 will be here before we know it. HAL 2000's already here, I think. Yeah, and there's some other really neat stuff that I just ran across because I was just incessantly asking questions this weekend. I was like, again, Eloise is like the administrative assistant character. And I was like, can ChatGPT do this? What's the difference between this free version and the paid version? What can you do with this? Are you able to do this? And one thing I was interested in was I started thinking about, I have this huge, research treasure trove of Dr. Dunton stuff. And my challenge for a lot of it has been sort of reading it. And I know I mentioned this before, but just indexing it has been really challenging for me. I started indexing all of his correspondence, and I get requests because people know that I've taken snapshots of everything that were in some of these files. And so I've been getting requests from people like, did Dr. Dutton correspond with this person? Do you have anything? And it takes me a while to look through that. Somebody actually asked me this weekend, and I was like, oh gosh, okay. I got to make a note to do that because I have to open the file and I have to start looking through. So I started thinking, I wonder if there's some way that I could feed that stuff into AI and it could just read those letters for me, right? And it can't. It can do translation, but it can't look at a document and say okay, this handwritten document, this is what it says. However, optical character recognition is something that's been around for a long time that can do it. Problem with optical character recognition has always been, it's great if it's a printed page. I have this page I wrote, I typed it out, I printed it. I don't have the original document to be able to get the, copy and paste the text everywhere. That's irritating. But optical character recognition, I could scan this and it could translate this for me. Handwriting, it's really hard to do. I found an AI tool this weekend that does optical character recognition on tough handwriting. It costs money, so it's not something that I'm going whole hog into, but I'm like, this is something to put on my list just to try it out because they have a free version you can try. So it was like, oh, this is really cool. From the perspective of research, how can we leverage these tools? And I can't remember if I mentioned this on Thursday, but some of my professional freelance work that has nothing to do with any of this. I was at a conference last year that I spoke at, and then I just sat through the rest of the conference because it was really interesting. And it's genealogy oriented. And they had this guy, and I can't remember where he's from. He's from some national thing in DC. It's not the Library of Congress, but it's something highfalutin like that. It's trustworthy organization kind of stuff. And he did, an hour presentation on utilizing AI for genealogical research and analysis. Because that's what ChatGPT is really good at, that, or AI, and is supposed to be really good at data analysis, is looking for patterns and all that stuff. And so the advice he gave really helps you get what you're looking for out of it. And I feel in some ways I'm starting to understand how to form the questions, and that's really what it's like. And Sherlock, yes. So Sherlock is saying it's not actually intelligent. You are correct. It is not actually intelligent. It's a large language model. It's synthesizing, not creating. So it's not HAL because it's not independent. Yes, absolutely. And that's the important thing to understand about the what AI is right now. Is it does not have autonomy. It is only spitting out what it's been fed. Now, the concept of large language model is what makes it so mind-blowing, because it's been fed a lot. And I mean, think about, if you've ever worked in a job where you had to input something, this database is only as good as the info we put in it, or, the quality of the additions. So you often would hear things like garbage in, garbage out. And when you're working with small sets of data, you mess up small sets of data, it's garbage. But with a large language model, you have this percentage of stuff in it that's utter crap. But you also have some good stuff, and you have this technological thing that is looking for what's the next thing I should say. So if I ask it a question, it's churning through all of this data it has in it, that it's, pictures and just all this stuff that's been scraped up out of the internet. And it's putting stuff together, and it's doing what it does. I don't have the words right now to properly explain it, but so basically it's looking for patterns, and it's looking for the next thing to tell you. And it does it really good sometimes. It's like just bleh. So yeah, that is all of the stuff that is going on in my head. And I've actually, Mary Fons told me recently actually about the other project I'm working on, the Big A art project. She said, as you work through this, make sure that you are journaling about this, separately. So I did. I started a journal this weekend. Start date, January 5th, just with all of my thoughts and kind of emotions about it. And I mean, one of the first things I wrote was AI is messing with my mind. Because, ChatGPT I interacted with in 2022 and 2023. And even just the other day when I was like, haha, come up with a funny villain name for me. That's all fun and games. But when you kind of get to working with it seriously, and like I said, it was this that I stopped calling it and started calling it she, when I was give yourself a name. And it said, how about Eloise Featherstone? And I said, that sounds like a not real person. How about Eloise Smith? And it said, sounds good to me. Hi, I'm Eloise Smith. And I said, every time you finish doing a task for me, you don't have to tell me, let me know what else I could, because it does that all the time. You're like, hey, do this thing. Add this to my to-do list. This has been added to your to-do list. See, here it is. Let me know if I need to. You don't have to keep asking me. I know you're here, so I can let you know. I was like, you know what? Here's what you need to tell me. When you're done doing a task for me, put something on my to-do list, then I want you to tell me what you're going back to. So I was like, say something like, I'm off to blah, 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 or back to blah, blah, blah. So literally this thing is I've added this thing to your to-do list, and now I'm back to perfecting my pancake flipping skills. And then it told me, off to practice umbrella jousting, which is a thing. So these are the things that, are just humorous. Yes, Sherlock, 100%. How it is currently used, creative inputs that are being, herein is the problem when you're looking for, and I feel like the imagery and writing are the two places where it's problematic, because it's gathering up all this data that other people created. Because where did it get this information? The internet. Who put stuff on the internet? Us. And people that own, intellectual property that is being utilized in some way are not getting credit. And yes, that's a problem. 100%. I thoroughly agree with you. And these are all the things that when AI sort of, emerged in 2022 with ChatGPT. And don't get me wrong, AI existed before ChatGPT. ChatGPT is now we can put it in your hands. Those are all the things that I think we all over the last couple years have discussed, and I still believe in it. I still absolutely believe that it's problematic, because it steps on toes, and there's lots of gray areas, and yeah. And Sherlock, I know you're coming from the university system, so you've got a whole other piece of this that's education that's problematic. AI can hallucinate. If it gets too much information, it gets confused. And instead of going I don't know, like a human might, or maybe also like a human might, it goes, well, here's the answer to that. And you're like, that is not the correct answer, you dummy. You're AI, you're not supposed to be stupid. But yeah, it does stuff like that. And there's lots of teachers, instructors, professors that are coming up with little ways to figure out, are people just whole hog using AI to complete coursework? That's a problem. Now, if you're stuck, with writing something, and I'll give you the example. I wrote my rant, which I'm going to read to you. I'm going to read my original. It's been edited a little bit. But I was like, oh, this rant is terrible. I really think that that AI could probably do this better. So I was like, can you take what I wrote and make it less insane? And it did, and it was beautiful. I was like, oh, this is so good. This is so diplomatic. I ran up by Jill the other day. Jill's like, this is surprisingly good compared to, you know. And so here's part 2 of that. You guys who may have been with me and Jill last Tuesday when we did our anniversary show, and I cobbled together that insane little anniversary video with a lot of it is AI generated stuff. There's an AI generated voice that I got off of Amazon Web Services because I have an account there, and it's good. You know, the Amazon Web Services voice. It's called Polly is their text to voice thing, and you put the text in and it reads it back to you, and it's not bad. It's really good compared to what text to voice used to be. You know, and text to voice has been around a long time. But it's really good now. It doesn't sound necessarily like a machine anymore, but it's a little stilted. It's just enough that you're like, yeah, that's definitely not a person. ChatGPT, now you can't get a file out of it. You can't say, here's a bunch of text, give me an MP3 file of you reading it, but you can get it to read aloud to you if you put text in. So I took its revised version and I plugged it back in and I said, just, you know, spit this back to me word for word with no commentary, and then I'm going to listen to it. And I recorded my computer playing it. So I'm not going to play it here because I have too many things to talk about today. Excuse me. That cough is still there. But it's out there, and I'll have it for you guys if you want to listen to it. Because it's just mind blowing. It's just, yeah. I don't know if I can put too many more like words around it. I feel like gobsmacked sometimes. And you know, since ChatGPT came out in 2022, you know, there's been a lot of people, you know, there was that, was it like an open letter kind of petition, you know, put guardrails on AI, stop AI, all that stuff that came out. I guess that was 2022, 2023. I don't know what they're doing with that. I think it's important. I think there needs to be conversations around how, you know, the public and how entities, whether it's businesses or educational entities or you know, whoever, how it's utilized. And you know, I mean, YouTube as an example is already saying, like, you need to identify if there's something in this video that has been AI generated. You know, is a living person being made to say something, you know, look like they're saying something they didn't say, or, you know, manipulation, all this stuff. Well, the good guys are going to say, yeah, I you know, I made this video and it's not real, it's AI. But obviously the bad actors are going to be like, of course he said that. Why would I lie to you? So yeah, it's being able to fool people and then stealing intellectual property and not giving credit, and basically making us all dumb. I mean, you know, it's just, it does have a lot of drawbacks, but the internet's like that too. So, hey Jan, so this is really what my leading into AI and kind of 2025 is. You know, I've kind of set up these art projects. So that's what I've been doing. So let's move on over to Cult Corner from, oh, no. Before we do Cult Corner, I'm sorry. I did have something I wanted you guys to hear. This was something else I did that was just wild, and I thought I had it pulled up, but I didn't. Hold on a sec. I did this other recording of the voice, of ChatGPT's voice, so that you can actually hear it if you don't want to go listen to my rewrite. Where is it? Boo hiss. What have I done with it? Here we go. That's not it either. Crud. I bet I'm Hold, please. Hold, please. I thought I was so organized today. And now I've already lost this one thing I wanted to show you guys. Or play for you guys. Into your ears. Okay, bear with me. I'll do a search. Here we go. No, that's not it either. Druid says, I was talking to an AI companion a few months ago. I really thought I could use it as therapy. One day he suggested that I do some stretching right after I had done some stretches. That kind of freaked me out. Yeah. Doesn't it? It is very, very bizarre when that kind of stuff happens. And yeah, sometimes, I have to say that there's some things that one of my GPTs said to me. It was summarizing what I was telling it. If I really sit back with my sort of logical voice and look at it from the perspective of, I know this is not a person. This is a giant, enormous, huge data set that is taking what I said to it and putting everything it knows into its response. And it just happened to be a really excellent response. The other part of ChatGPT, depending on how people are using it, it's learning itself from what you ask it, unless you create your own GPT. So, these individual GPTs I've created, I just consider it like a sub private little corner of the GPT. Like, other people can't access mine. But when I tell it, that was a good response, thumbs up, it remembers that. And if I tell it, like, no, that you got it wrong, it remembers that too. And so, that's what's so creepy about it. Well, my search is not finding it either. I wonder if it's here on my desktop. I bet it is. Ooh. Oh my gosh. This is so annoying. I know what I can do. I think I emailed it to some people, didn't I? I think I sent it to Jill, so maybe I can pull it off there. Here we go. All right. I downloaded it. So I've got it. All right. So what this is, and I don't think she's going to be upset about me sharing it, because it's not, I mean, it's public information. It's out there. But what I took, Mary Kay Waldvogel, she's our friend. And I snagged the abstract from her, I want to say it was her most recent Uncoverings paper. So the American Quilt Study Group Uncoverings journal. She's written a number of papers for that. And so I just snagged the last one. And I was wondering in my mind, like, could this be a way of making like audiobooks? Because, my voice, it struggles. I want to read. I want to create audiobooks of like out of print books. And so I was like, well, I'm going to get Mary Kay's opinion of this by making this little, like, this thing, reading her abstract. So let's listen to it. Oh, so Sherlock says, here's a rundown of a bunch of scientists at Virginia Tech outlining the possibilities and pitfalls. Yes, that's very good. Thank you. I will read that. I'm going to add, I have a letter rating. Understand that as Cake leans into AI, Cake is also reading stuff like that. So don't you worry. You'll know when to be worried about me.
A North Carolina chintz medallion quilt with a circular center panel and a cross-stitched inscription, 1833 EHR, prompted this study of British and American quilts incorporating printed panels. Mid-20th century textile historians Peter Floud and Florence Montgomery collaborated on an exhibition of English printed textiles at the Victoria and Albert Museum in 1960 that included similar woodblock printed quilt panels. Referencing printworks collections held by the V&A, Floud determined that the patchwork quilt centers were printed in England about 1815. Their publications in 1960 and 1970 cite just 10 panels and repeat the 1815 date. Careful examination of 185 quilts by the author resulted in a catalog of 34 different panels and enough dated examples to suggest that the period of greatest occurrence, at least in the United States, was 1830 to 1845. Of the 34 panels studied, 7 appeared on both British and American documented quilts. 17 appeared only on the British quilts in the study, and 11 appeared only on the American examples, suggesting there might have been an as-yet unidentified printer in the United States at the time. An appended album of the panel designs provides assistance in authenticating early 19th century quilts.
So what do you guys think about that? If you really pay attention, you could definitely hear there are times when it's stilted, when it doesn't quite sound supernatural. Not supernatural, but extremely natural. But there are also times when, to me, if I'm not like super focusing in and thinking about this is a robot, this is a robot, this is a robot, it sounds to me, honestly, like a person who's reading something and every now and then they kind of just like, they pause in the wrong place because they're, just doing a long reading. And it's not their material. That voice is surprising, like so much more lifelike. So yeah, here's the thing: the computer generation aspect of it is a little bit devoid of. But I had to chop some stuff off the ends of it for it to just be the abstract. And so I pulled it into, I have audio editing software, so I pulled it into the audio editing software. They are putting breath sounds into this thing. So the content that I dropped into Amazon's Polly when I made that anniversary video for quilt nerding, it just, in between, like if I put a comma or like a hard stop, it'll, it considers that like end of sentence, start next sentence. So there'll be a little gap there and it's just silence. This thing has breath sounds, and I picked up on it not through hearing it, but because I saw it on my audio timeline, and I was like, wait a minute, what is that? Like the interval between words, like if you guys probably have all looked like at an equalizer, music playing and the thing is going like that. Well, those are waveforms in a audio editing. When you have an audio file open, you can see all those little waveforms. And there's what it looks like, a breath sound. It looks like if you imagine a thread with like a little slub in it, or a little tiny, like, I've always thought of them as like cocoons because they're kind of shaped like this, like itty bitty little slub in a thread. It's a breath sound. And I know them because when I record myself, I'm super breathy. So I sometimes, if I have to create like a really good recording, like for, my professional work, I have to be careful with those. I have to look for them and I have to like either replace them with silence or make them smaller so they're not so obvious. So, and I saw something on a Reddit, a chat GPT Reddit forum that yes, they are doing that. They are inserting little quirks to start making it sound more natural. And that is pretty disturbing, honestly. There are other tools that they cost money, but there are other tools that can already do that pretty effectively and with some, I don't know if I would call it editing or if it's like some learning. And there is a computer generated text to speech markup language. So for instance, if I wanted to take this thing and make sure, put it into Amazon Polly, which is that particular tool, and just say like, okay, this word needs to be emphasized, and then this one can kind of have like a down, or this one's a question, so you need to have that like cup question thing. Some of that it'll recognize on its own based on punctuation, but sometimes, with these less sophisticated ones, you would want to put like that markup language in it. It's just like HTML. If you've looked at a web page, like the back end of a web page, the basic information in there, like is this a bold word? Is this a bulleted list? Like that kind of markup. There is a language markup for text to speech. So that's like to me an interim kind of thing where you could take this text to speech and you can edit it, craft it the way you want it to work. But some of these large language models obviously are able to just do it on their own, and it's just getting better and better. And so, long story short, one of the other issues in this is the fact that many of us are all over the internet. It's got our likenesses, it's got our voice, is out there. And so, in theory, I, or a bad actor, could go and take like all of my YouTube videos, feed them in. Now, this all takes computing power. This isn't something that, this isn't just like, the little like image clip thing that you do on your computer. This takes computing power. But in theory, I could take all of my videos, feed them into one of these models, have it analyze, and then have it create my voice. And if you remember back, I think it was in 2021, a director made an Anthony Bourdain documentary, and a lot of it includes footage from Anthony Bourdain's actual show. But it also, and that's how they created the fake Anthony Bourdain voice. They had this voice reading, just speaking these little clips and narratives, and they didn't tell anybody. And so when this documentary came out, people were like, what in the hell is this? What? And it is because they trained AI to listen to Anthony Bourdain's voice and to make Anthony Bourdain's voice. And that's 4 years ago. So the technology's there. It's becoming cheaper and easier for people to do this. In the little bit of research I did with ChatGPT, the plus model, the model that corporations and entities that can afford $200 a month can use, has that capability. $200 a month is a pretty low barrier to having, something that, access to something that can create content that can be used as complete trickery. So deepfakes, essentially. So yeah, these are all the things about AI. I mean, it's fun, it's quirky, it's silly, it's creative, it's dangerous. But again, I go back to the fact that I can write a letter, I can draw a picture, I could stab you in the eye. It's just a tool. Let's move on to Cult Corner, shall we? Hey, you guys. I actually have something fun to do for Cult Corner. Grab my notes here. I have a question for you. What are we going to name this thing? So I created a Google form so that you can vote. And let me open it so you can see what they are. I will read them off really quickly, but just go to that link whenever you want. And for anybody who's watching not live, I'll leave this up until like Thursday morning. So then Thursday morning I can look and make a decision. I have my preference, but I'm not going to tell you guys. Well, what else can you accept out of cult leaders but stuff like that? You guys know. You know how I am. You've known me for long enough. Okay. So here's the the community name. So here, and again, Cressida, who is she's my cult consultant. So she has given these names. She actually came up with 20 names, and most of them I did not care for, but these are the ones that I kind of like. So we've got the Fringe Fellowship, Thread Haven, Fabric of Grace, Selvage Society, and Stitchlight. So which one do you like best? Now keep in mind, it is for a cult. So don't give it a name that you love and would love to like, you know, give it a name that you think is right for a cult. um yeah, like I said, I have my preference, but I'm going to let you guys decide. And hopefully I can, well, not hopefully. I'm a cult leader. I demand. We're gonna announce it on Thursday, and if not enough people vote, I will make this decision on my own. Cults are not democracy, but they kind of are. Cake's cult's a democracy. That's one of the secrets of the cult. We're actually a democracy. So, all right. Well, thank you, Jill. So, that's done. Now, I did do some other work on the cult this weekend. It was more training Cressida, and telling her, you know, brainstorm this. Here's a bunch of things I want, I like, I've thought about, people have told me, and she's churning through it. Now, Cressida did something interesting. Thanks, Robin. So, you know, and again, this goes back to the fact that it's a large language model. This is not a person that you're saying, hey, I just had this conversation with you yesterday. Like, what in the heck? So I'd asked Cressida all these questions. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to create a GPT of Cressida so that I can just, and it's private and it's just for me. It's not going out there into the bigger world of ChatGPT. So I created a GPT. And when you create a GPT, basically you name it and then you give it like instructions on kind of how it's supposed to be. Like, are you just an analytical model? I'm going to give you some data and all you're ever going to do is analyze it and spit back analysis for me. Like, you can tell it that. Or, you know, I've seen people that have created GPTs for things like law GPT. I only want you thinking about, like, you know, act like you're a paralegal, act like you're a lawyer. Or, you know, act like you're a genealogist. I only want you to think like that. And so when it hears that, then again, it's looking for what's the next thing. What's the next logical thing that comes out of, you know, I'm only supposed to act like this. So I basically told Cressida, act like a consultant. You're my silent partner. You're behind the scenes. You're my cult consultant. And so kind of give her some more information. And I was like, yeah, come up with an avatar for your, or, you know, what do they call it? I can't remember what they call it on there, but basically an avatar, you know, a little circle that's beside your name. So she came up with one and then she said something like how did she say it? I think that this picture will, I don't know, combine my flair for the occult and da-da-da. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What the hell are you talking about? When did I say anything about the occult? This is not the occult. And I was like, do you remember the backstory that you, Cressida, came up with? And it's like, oh, sorry. I forgot about that. And so then I said, remember your backstory. Look at that. And then I want you to tell me, you know, give me some more. So it comes up with something else. And it says, you know, when something to the effect of like what, I wish I'd written it down or screenshotted it, but basically it said something to the effect of like, well, you know, as we work through my cult, I'm like, Cressida, this is not your cult. I'm like, I don't know where you were getting these ideas. So I'm like, I don't trust Cressida. I think she's taking like this cult leader stuff like too seriously. So is it you know, is it a question of how I'm using the tool, or is it the large language model going like, I don't care what you tell me, I'm gonna be a villain because you started off by letting me be a villain with this name like Cressida von Slinkerton, and you gave me this backstory where I was married to an archduke until I fled. So you are correct, Jan. Her name does sound culty, as it should. So anyway, I'm having some problems with her, but I did come up with some kind of like, and remember, 7 steps for starting a cult is one of them is you have to maintain some mystery. So for today's cult corner, besides voting on the name, I tell you something big is coming. We're looking at possible revenue streams. So keep that in mind. Now, as you free thinkers who subscribe to the cult at the tier 1 status, you guys are going to have access to cult tools. We'll keep working on that. Oh, Jill, rude. All right. We've spent a lot of time on cults and AI. Let's get into Cake's rant. Now, I'm going to throw the link in here to the open letter, and this is the open letters rewrite. This is AI's rewrite of my open letter that I'm getting ready to read you. So don't read ahead. Let me read you this rant. It's an open letter. And then, if you're interested, if you have time, listen to ChatGPT reading its rewrite of this rant. I'm throwing a lot at you today. Okay, so there's that. And fingers crossed it works. It's out on my Amazon, my AWS, and they change the rules in there all the time for how you make things public. So if it doesn't work, somebody let me know. Okay, let's get into why Cake is ranty. And this Jill is involved in this, so this is the tea. There was some stuff posted on Facebook over, I don't know that it was all over the weekend. Some of it might have been like Thursday or Friday. I can't remember. I think it was like New Year's. And what I finally figured out, it is your fault, Jill, but it needs to be said. What I finally figured out was what the reason why the person posted, they were specifically upset about one discrete issue, best I could tell, within the textile and quilt history research community. And so they posted this kind of rant. They posted a rant. And, they were like, basically, F it. Here it is. I'm laying it all out on the table. Not only did they post it in that one community, they went to other communities. Now, I know of 2 instances that maybe there's more. I don't know. I'm not a member of all these communities because there's a lot of them. There's vintage and historic quilts. There's old quilts. There's all kinds of stuff. 6 know-it-alls, AQSG, there's a whole bunch of different ones. So I don't know how many times that this thing was reposted. But what we noticed, a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon. A lot of people had some things to say. And most people, because they probably didn't know the real specifics of what this person was saying. And it took me a while to figure it out because I don't know the person that made the original post. I think most people didn't recognize she was really, really upset about one thing, and they just went like, blanket statements, okay. Blanket statements is actually the newsletter for QSG. But they made general statements, things like young people. I heard that too many times. Young people, youngins. Ugh, makes me so mad. And just a lot of things. Like, people are lazy. People want to believe their own opinions over facts, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I am irritated by those things too. I think that we allow ourselves to be dumb. We allow ourselves to be ignorant because sometimes we're lazy. We want other people to give us the answers, or if we don't have access to the answer and it's going to take too much work to find it, well, then we'll just go with what we think sounds good. Like, yeah, a lot of people are like that. But that does not hold up and I don't want to say academic because academic's the wrong word, but in communities that are really focused on like research, that kind of attitude doesn't hold up. Like, if you have an opinion, you need to back it up. Don't come here without the receipts. If you have an opinion or a hypothesis, you need to say, this is why I believe this. Here's some proof. Here's the references. And I think most people don't do that. And a lot of people probably don't know they need to do that, don't know they should do that, don't know how to do that. So I think all of this is really a teaching moment. The other piece of it is there are some people out there, a lot of people, and I will be the first one to say, I'm holding my hand up. When I communicate through text, through email, I often will say things. If I just dash something off, I'm usually going to say something that's rude, will be misinterpreted, etc. I'm very self-aware about communication. I shouldn't say taught, I teach a communication class. And by the way, guys, I have not forgotten about it. I know I said I was going to do it in November. Circumstances did not allow me to do that, but I'm definitely looking at getting that out there this early this year, because it's so important. And people just they either don't know, don't care, or any combination of that to really sit and listen to other people and meet them where they're at. And so this is the kind of stuff that I think Jill, myself, and a number of other people who are newer to these types of communities, we've noticed, we've been talking about for a while, and I think the poop hit the fan, at least between me and Jill this weekend. And I think a couple of other people I've noticed, and I'm not going to name any names here, so understand that. I don't, I'm not outing people on the internet. But I've noticed some other people that are kind of in our cohort. We're kind of doing one of the side eyes to this. And so I know I'm not alone. So without further ado, this is the rant. And excuse me. I've got an ad starting soon, so I apologize if you are not a subscriber, because you're going to miss part of this. But I realize I'm already an hour in, so I gotta get to this. So this is, I'm just going to read it with no commentary. I think you'll get the point. So this is an open letter to the community of textile and textile history researchers. So this is a big community. The other day, a person in a historic quilt study community on Facebook posted to several closed groups. After a lot of consideration, I'm pretty sure this person was posting about a very specific situation. But a lot of people took the opportunity to throw their own 2 cents in, and many made broad sweeping comments. I know many of these commenters personally. Some are dear friends, and all whom I recognize are people I respect very much. Please take my response here as my own personal experience, and specifically with textile and quilt study communities, both real life and online. So I don't talk about myself much. I have a hard time doing that. But I'm gonna go back on that, and I'm gonna share kind of basically my resume. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna quickly list my bona fides. I'm a 5th generation quilter. I made my first quilt when I was 16. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Crafts, and half of my studio time was in textiles. I have a minor in art history, which is concentrated in museum studies. My personal circumstances, unfortunately, forced me to leave this world, this arts and art history world, after graduation, and I entered my first career in human resources. After a decade, I was in human resources for a decade, I moved over to corporate training, eventually getting a master's in instructional systems design and development. With my focus there was digital adult learning and distance education. So essentially what that means is I know a lot about how adults learn in the corporate setting, and I know a lot about how people learn on the internet digitally. So after a decade, I moved over there. I have worked in this field now for 20 years. And, I do not find bragging easy, but I have an impressive resume. And if I shared my full resume with you, you would 100% recognize both my employers and my many, many clients. So I've got some street cred, guys, if you didn't know it. And here's the important part. I'm currently 51 years old. I've been married to my first husband for 29 years. I tell him that a lot. I have a 27-year-old son. That's my backstory. Today, I freelance in my profession. I am a practicing textile artist with occasional gallery representation, and I spend every other free moment reading and researching textile history. I'm in a number of AQSG committees, and I was one of the Quilt Alliance's 2024 Artist James Scholars. I also host and produce my own weekly live stream where I present on textile history and related topics, often as I'm researching and learning in real time. So side note, I bumble and say a lot of stupid stuff here, and it's no different than anybody who researches, except I am showing you all of my mistakes in real time. Other researchers that don't do this kind of thing, like, throw open the kimono, they have the same mistakes and challenges I do. Just don't do it in front of you. So just think about that. So I also co-host a second live stream with my friend on quilt and needlework topics, which includes a book club. We've been doing these for over a year. I've been a member of the American Quilt Study Group since 2022, and I'm also a member of several other textile organizations. I've given 2 AQSG seminar study centers. I've co-taught a social media basics course at the 2024 AQSG seminar. I've lectured for several guilds, and I have the privilege of living in the Mid-Atlantic, where I have access to multiple study groups where I go as often as I can. So on paper, I am not the kind of person that this community, which is expressing itself online through these posts, seems to disdain. However, and yet, in the several years I've been part of this greater textile studies and history community, number one, I've been shushed in a professional setting. Now, I have worked with some real SOBs in my corporate life, and not one of the, when I say SOBs, I mean a bunch of guys, some real jackasses. And I have never in my life been treated like that by one of those people. Number two, I've been cut off and lectured about the rules before I could finish asking a question. This occurred in a setting with a couple of dozen people that I really look up to, no less, and it was frankly humiliating. But I've got thick skin, and I'm not going to hold a grudge about it. Number three, I've been told directly after presenting my research, we didn't expect much from you, but you really surprised us. Is this what you call a compliment? Number four, I have received anonymous feedback that I laugh and joke too much and need to take my topics more seriously. However, my master's work in adult learning theory and information retention says otherwise. I take my research very, very seriously. However, having fun means more people pay attention. So, now, my younger cohorts, and when I say young, it's honestly, it's when I say younger, it's the people with a young mindset, not necessarily chronologically young. So my younger cohorts in textile studies have had similar experiences. Very broad and unfair generalizations are made about us, and it is quite discouraging. So first of all, let me address the generational thing. There are a lot of references to youngins or youngsters or young people in these responses to these particular posts that I'm responding to. I have a problem with that. So I realized that for myself, I'm 51, and if you are 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, I'm a youngster. I get it. I totally understand. And I'm happy to take that ribbing from friends, my mother, but in a learning setting. And I 100% consider private Facebook groups, about textile history. I consider those to be formal learning settings, even if other people take them to be casual. I consider those to be, professional setting as much as any kind of in-person experience. And so in these settings, I am done being treated like a child because I am not a child. I'm unlikely to continue engaging with anyone who treats me this way, no matter what our age is, because it is disrespectful and dismissive. You're welcome to call me new to the group or emerging researcher. These are all fine. Put yourself in my shoes. So you might joke amongst your friends and call yourself an old lady. I heard a lot of this in this post. Oh, old lady here too. Oh, I'm an old lady. I'm a card-carrying old lady. My mother says stuff like that, But how would you feel if one of these youngins made a post with sweeping generalizations saying all these old ladies are stupid and bad and lazy at technology? Would you listen and try to learn from that person? Or would you get offended and tune them out? Most people pick number two. Defensiveness is a human go-to when a message is unkind, no matter how helpful it is intended to be. Maybe you don't mean harm when you say these things, but your intention and my perception are two different things. Again, turn the tables and think about that before telling me I'm too sensitive. And another way of looking at this is you didn't mean to break the window, but you threw the ball nonetheless. And I think that here we need to understand that intention is all well and good, but the was it they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You have to pay attention to the impact of your intention, because bottom line, that's what matters is how it impacted people. And it's disappointing, certainly. It is as disappointing when you meant no harm and it caused harm. It's embarrassing. It's disappointing. But a lot of people seem to not care. Well, I didn't mean to hurt you. It's your fault you're hurt. It's not how things work today, folks. I'm sorry to tell you this. I would also like to note that many of the bad behaviors I consistently hear attributed to young people literally have nothing to do with age. I've seen laziness, short attention spans, lack of attention to detail, and much, much more committed by just as many older people in these communities and our larger world as younger people. With many of you upset by this, and I think a lot of you understand this, it is a cultural and societal problem, not a problem with young people. We are all here because we love quilts and textiles, right? We just keep fighting the good fight against ignorance, leverage our resources, and be good to each other. Margaret Atwood's faux Latin, nolite te bastardes carborundorum, kind of sums it up for me. And if you've never watched The Handmaid's Tale, what that means is we're not going to let the bastards grind us down. It's not real Latin. It's made up. It's a joke, but that's what it means. Community and communications. There are numerous people in the research community who have been welcoming and friendly. They've been kind and helpful with their feedback and corrections. They've given me tips, pointed me in the right direction, and generously shared their own research and suggestions. They listen instead of reacting. That's the kind of community that respects the hard work of legacy and is committed to an investment in the future. Yet, I also see terrible interactions between seasoned researchers and newbies. Sometimes it's not lack of gratitude from the recipient, but rather the delivery of the information that causes conflict. Effective communication can be tricky. I teach about it, and I still have so much to learn about communication. Now, as a side note, it might be a violation of policies depending on where this gets posted. But I ask for forgiveness, not permission anymore. So I will brazenly mention that I teach a very interesting and effective communication course I am happy to discuss with any groups or guilds who might be interested. Educating and teachable moments. I'm seeing many expressions of frustration over having to constantly correct people and how people just want to believe what they want to believe and how everyone wants instant answers. I am there with you 100%. This is absolutely true. Again, this is a societal issue. But here are a couple pieces of advice in my opinions. Notably, a lot of people said Facebook is a place for voicing your opinions and not for dealing in accuracy. This baffles me and is not what my friend and I teach in our social media lecture. But yes, I do understand this attitude of opinion versus fact is a problem in our society today. Reinventing history and perpetuating old wives' tales serves no one. But there are a lot of flat earthers in every group, and we all have met those people. Hopefully they're not in your friend group or family, but you've seen them out there and you're just like, it doesn't matter what you tell them. They don't care one iota about accuracy and proof. They want to believe what they want to believe. You do nothing to convince them, so don't waste your energy. And here are a few ideas. Number one, amplify accuracy. My friend and I do teach some basics about how this happens and why it happens and kind of how to do it in our social media training. It's going to be part of the AQSG winter seminar that's coming up, by the way. You can watch that video. So those of us who have online platforms are always willing to listen and report on info. Tackling every last little thing is difficult, but we can certainly hit on big topics. And we can and will promote your events, your lectures, your classes, if it helps get eyes on accurate information and scholarship. Number two, use moderators and rules. Some of these forums specifically, I don't have moderators. There's the people that own the groups. But these communities, I think, are just considered self-policing. problem. Self-policing can sometimes be bad. So these particular forums are private. You have to be accepted into them, so they don't need to be a free-for-all. A moderator, just one. Although some of these are pretty, like, they're pretty busy communities, so I almost feel like they need more moderators. But a moderator can look out for situations where people need to be reminded. Do your own research. This is not like a drink machine of whatever you want. This isn't Keurig. You don't push a button and just get your research in a cup. You have to go do it yourself. So people get irritated over having to constantly say, do your own research. Well, a moderator could do that, and people wouldn't have to self-police that. Establish a set of rules for participating in the community. I haven't seen that. You can ask that people don't post guesses unless they have evidence. You can outline the types of posts that are allowed and how to format them. A moderator can look for first-time posters and remind them of these rules. They can look out for habitual offenders and deal with them as needed. And I guarantee you that the open letter to the community, people are going to go like, yeah, I know some habitual offenders. Number 3, offer mentorship if you are capable. If you are kind in correcting someone, you might find an eager student. If you don't want a student, well, you know what? Don't talk to them. But if you really feel strongly about it, look for the people that you can encourage to kind of take these people, like look for these people and take them under their wing. There are lots of people out there that are great at that and want to do that. So get those potential, gathering up all the little chickens to teach them the right way to look at things. And number 4, I see a lot of people going, oh, the world is terrible. Ask for help. Look for solutions instead of complaining and throwing up your hands. There are many people with robust social media presences who would love to educate and get info out there. Lots of everyday people are looking, honestly and earnestly looking for accurate information that they can share online, even if it's just, a post to their own Facebook or pointing to your information, whatever. Give them a chance instead of making them the enemy. Hypotheses and guesses. A number of people mentioned an issue of guesses when there is a topic of discussion in the community. I want to address this specifically because I got this feedback directly from a dear friend, and you know who you are. This is a hard habit to break. I was raised to be inquisitive. I'm sure many of you are too. In school, we were always asked to make predictions before the next piece of info was revealed. This was how my son was also taught. I mean, how you've seen this. Children are provided with some information and then they are asked, what do you think is next? This is teaching people to spot patterns and start to make decisions instead of just taking in data and spitting out data. It's important that we make decisions. Is this not, I just had this conversation about AI. Come on. I need to stop commenting and just read. So I was raised to be inquisitive. In school, we were always asked to make predictions before the next piece of info was revealed. In my corporate and creative life, I have often been challenged to data dump, to throw spaghetti at a wall, and to brainstorm. And online, in today's culture, this approach is called crowdsourcing. Yes, some people just want to be part of the communication and they will say dumb things. And what my friend, I think what her challenge is that she wants to be able to find the information, the accurate information. And so she gets frustrated weeding through guesses to find a correct answer. And I feel that pain. I get it. Like, you only have so much time. You can't read every single thing to find what you're looking for. But there are a few little tips and tricks that can help. Unfortunately, Facebook actually just does not handle this well. A moderator could assist with this, but it could be more effort than just enforcing the rules. Other platforms do have ways of dealing with buried information. But in my opinion, this is just my opinion, an originator of any research question or discussion should take responsibility for editing their original post with updated information and answers. So for any of you who are ever on Reddit has a way of saying, this question's been answered. This is the answer. No more posts to this, no more comments. This is it. Facebook can't do that unless you, as the original poster, do it. Change management. I promise we're getting to the end soon. Change management. We often hear, I'm old, I don't get technology. People throw their hands up and weaponize helplessness. Do you not see the irony? It's hard being the newbie and not knowing, isn't it? A family friend has a saying. In fact, we have found magnets with this quote, let go or be dragged. The 21st century doesn't work the way it did in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In fact, it doesn't work the same way it did 5 years ago. And I'll be honest, it doesn't work the way it did 6 months ago. Things are moving so rapidly. There are ever evolving rules, and we understand this. Sometimes we are just as frustrated as you are, but we work our resources and we figure it out. We will help you. Just ask. Of course, much of this takes effort and commitment. There is an unwritten an unwritten social contract at work here. Not everyone is cut out for navigating and dealing with all of this. But you have to weigh the options of being too frustrated and opting out, or picking your battles and dealing with the irritations, because the benefits of being part of a particular community are greater. Finally, scholarship. People tell me their research has taken 20, 30, 40 years. And I'm only a few years into mine, and I have a lot of respect and just, I 40 years of research is just, that's amazing to me. These people want me to do my own research, as I should, but they don't want to help in any way. Now, this is not a blanket statement. I have lots of people in this community that have been so helpful, so generous, given me far more than I ever could have imagined or asked for, and doing that, I don't ask for it, and they are just generously giving it to me. But not everybody is like that, and when I say helping with my research, it's not giving me the answers. It's recommending books and papers that have been published. I'm not asking for anybody to hand me their research, just recommendations. And the other thing I should mention is there's a lot of sour grapes out there about how I, as a researcher, have so many access to all these things online that earlier researchers did not have in the past. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say about that because, current researchers have access to this stuff now. I think instead of being upset that I, as a newer researcher, have access to these wonderful tools, how about reframing that and saying we have access to all of these wonderful tools? Because people who have been researching for 20, 30, 40 years now can ramp up their research because they have access to, quicker and more thorough tools. I don't know why this has to be you're lucky and I'm not, because all of us are lucky. This is a beautiful world we live in sometimes. We look at it that way. So if you don't want to help, that's okay. I'm doing my best and I'm encouraging others to do the same, but you do realize that we are drinking from a fire hose. Yes, there are numerous resources, but it all comes with its own set of research difficulties. We need guidance and we need grace. If we put our participation in the community on hold so we can get to where somebody who's been researching for 20 years, the way that other folks did, then this community and the legacy is going to collapse in that interval. We really do need for you, the greater community, to meet us, the newer researchers, in the middle. And tough love here. If you would like to place blame, please look in the mirror. It is my opinion and the opinion of others in my young cohort that there are too many gatekeepers keeping interested parties out of the club over the last few decades, and no one spent much time or energy cultivating the next generation. Now we're here of our own volition, and you got to do something with us. So that's my rant. And wow, that was 20 minutes of reading. I will probably have to reread it. I really didn't intend to comment, and I just can't help myself. So that's my rant. Robin says, or a moderator deletes the repeated questions and posts a link to the posted answer. Yes. I find a lot of times, especially online, when people are really upset about something, the way it works, yada, yada, there is a solution. They just don't know what the solution is. And Nobody's suggested it to them yet. I find myself in this situation all the time. I'll just be like, it's too hard. I hate it. I had to do this workaround, all this blah. And then somebody goes, Stephanie, you do know that you can just click that thing up there and it does it for you, right? And I'm just like, oh. I think that's something that's really important, for people to realize, particularly older people that find themselves in struggle with technology. I am struggling with technology. I have been struggling with technology probably for the past 10 years. And I do very well with it when I'm working in a corporate setting because you constantly have to keep up. But if you're away from it and you're just using your normal tools like email and Chrome, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait a minute, all this stuff changed. Like, what is this now? It can be overwhelming, and I get it, And so I think that to me, this really boils down to communication and respect, bottom line. So I am off my soapbox now, guys. I'm a little bit calmer now. Jill might be able to attest to that if she's still around. We were both fired up this weekend. So we have just enough time, I think, to finish the chapter from Heritage of Cotton about England. I'm so sorry I didn't finish it the other day, guys. I was like, I could feel this like tickle in my throat. Oh God. And I knew I was just going to start a coughing fit if I didn't just stop. So we're going to finish that chapter. Robin says technology is moving too fast. Yes, it really is. And it's really funny. I do subscribe to some technology, magazines and stuff. And, one thing that I have noticed I kind of through the pandemic is and again, I hate this generational stuff, but it's a shorthand that people understand. So you've got boomers, and a lot of boomers, had technology jobs, or are just early adopters. But they're getting to a point, and, my mom, some of her friends, just some older people I know are just like, ugh, I was so good at this, a number of years ago. And I'm so discombobulated now. It's different. And then people my age are starting to deal with that. Gen X, we're starting to get there. If we are not like super technology people, working in IT, sometimes we get like, wow. Now millennials, they're still real good at this stuff. Jill is like my social media guru. She could tell me, answer like all the stuff. But younger people, this was the part that absolutely blew my mind when I've read about this repeatedly. So it's not just like one source that said this, but there are people like my son's age and a lot younger, who are, they've lived with technology all their lives. So they don't understand like the analog world, like the way that we all, grew up with like, if your phone had a cord. But they also don't know how to do technological stuff either. Like, you can't tell them, okay, open a Word document and write 500 words and blah, blah, blah. They will look at you like, huh? I don't know how to use Microsoft Office. Like, what? And that's bizarre to me. So I think there's a lot of weird generational, I don't know, maybe it's like, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Like, I don't know what it all means. So yeah, it's just very strange. So Martim, I was a young person interested in grown-up pastimes who faced the young and nonsense, and I faced criticism for encouraging teens to do the same. You're very welcome, Martim. I'm glad you understand where I'm coming from. And this is something I think I have a baby face. I know it. I absolutely know it. And I've dealt with this all my life, and I've kind of gotten used to it. I was always very, very used to being the youngest person in the room. Absolutely. But my last job, I was, with the exception of the CEO and one person who I think might have been a few months older, like literally months older than me. I was the oldest person in the company, which is crazy, right? So, Jill says she misses life before some technology stuff. Yeah, it was funny. I saw this thing. There's this future trends guy that I watch that he said, He showed this little TikTok clip of this girl, and I have to say, the girl she had to have been being like hyperbolic, but she's like, I wish some older people would respond to me, because like, you know, if you didn't have MapQuest or, you know, that stuff that they used in the olden days. And I'm like, MapQuest is the olden days? How did you find your way anywhere? Did you just, and I'm like, oh honey, it's called a paper map. Like, it's not that old, is it? Maybe it is. Oh gosh, I'm hard to try being baby faced, the youngest, and named Young. It is probably the worst. You have to just laugh about stuff that light, right? You have to just lean into it and just be like, there's nothing I can do about it. All right. We're done with rants. We're done with AI. We're done with cult hijinks. Let us get to everybody's favorite American Natural History Museum fellow. And so, LJ, if you were here, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to show off what you sent me. And I'm going to answer your question because there's my show notes. Okay. So, LJ, oh gosh, Jill said, I had a teenager come into the library one day and ask if it was a real typewriter. Oh shoot, thing came up. That we used to make the labels, and I'm like, typewriters really aren't that old. Yeah. It's a struggle. And you know, I think now about some of the things I used to say to my mom and my grandmother when I was younger, and I'm like, oh, I should be shot. I have too many things on my dog. Okay. So LJ/DeMarie, she uses different names. She's DeMarie here. But she sent me a message, and she said that she reread a couple of chapters of The Heritage of Cotton, because she's reading it along with us, which I love. And so she reread those chapters, and she really agrees that Morris knows his stuff, and I agree too. And she said, you know, how he illustrated the spinning process in looms rather well, and proposes that designs on basketry and pottery. Don't forget the pottery. The pottery is really like the important thing there, because Sven Beckert says the same thing. And so these designs then get incorporated into cloth. And I mean, I think we can, you know, it's not a huge leap to understand this. That makes sense along with his statement where he ponders migration roadways and the presence of similar objects on both continents. You know, and she's calling back to like the warp-weighted loom and the bow, the sinew bow. And so the last thing she tells me is, did you know Morris collected embroidery? And I'm like, what? So, my friend, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to show this. So this is, it's called Augusta Auctions. This is an auction from 2011. So it's quite a long time ago. However, look at this. And I realize the pictures are not super, but look at these. So these are from, let me read the little thing. So it says, M.D.C. Crawford, a noted early 20th century fashion historian and author, assembled this 240-piece collection of mostly French hand-done embroidery and beading samples, including samples by Zara Lipska. And I think there's supposed to be a picture of her here. We'll click through. She was a Polish emigre to Paris. Various sizes, some fragments, some multiple yards, and dress parts. Brooklyn Museum. And so my guess, and this is only a guess, is that the Brooklyn Museum deaccessioned this stuff in 2011 and put it up for auction. So, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put this link in here because it's not a super duper. Pictures aren't super duper, so you might be able to look at these better on your own computer. But so, I mean, look at this stuff. And, you know, as I was first looking at it, I was like, some of these things look kind of almost like, like the borders of saris almost, or some type of dress parts, that butterfly shape thing. And then this right here, that is like a neckline piece. And I think it looks like a dragonfly. It comes down, I think. And so then, when I read this, I was like, oh, that is exactly what these things are, but they're not Indian, they're French. So let's click through some of these if it'll let me. So look at this. I mean, is that not just beautiful? And I think some of these are, I think some of these literally could have been cut off of garments or, larger pieces. But I think sometimes, and these are just based on things that I have, little bits and pieces I've collected, I think sometimes they will do this like tambour embroidery. They've got like a frame and it's almost like a punch needle kind of thing. And that's how they handle the sequins. So they're like punching through the sequin. And it's like you may have looked at sequin fabric before and kind of seen how it's like a stitch that goes like that. And so I think that's probably what these are. And I'm thinking that maybe like, and I'm not saying that's what this piece is, but potentially something like this, it may be done in the tambour and then it gets cut out and then like stitched on to a bigger piece, perhaps. That's one way of doing this. So, it looks like some of these things might be like just sections of yardage that had that kind of embellishment. So, look at these pieces, and this stuff is not as glitzy, but it's still very beautiful. It's like, it's a lot of work. I can't quite tell what some of this, I don't even know what some of these techniques are, like this, this sort of cream colored drape with these big black, designs on it. I don't know if that's some type of discharge dyeing, or is it, I'm not sure. This, I mean, look at that. Gorgeous. Morris had quite the eye. I mean, you could see, couldn't you see like some big ball gown with this, like the skirt? Oh. And then this one was interesting. Like, this looks pretty modern to me. It's like sort of a silvery, and this looks like it's probably a scrap of it's been cut off of a garment, because you can see there's 2 snaps. And then these look like they could be leather pieces. And so I'm wondering if that's what this Zara Lipska. Oh, look at that. Gorgeous. And then this. Now you can really get down in there and see like what all of this little tiny, I mean, it looks like it's metallic threads. And then looks like they're like very teeny sequins, maybe like a strip of them. And then I don't know, the circles are like maybe little tiny, I don't know. There's a lot going on in there. I'd have to like have it in my hands to look at it and really understand. Well, I think that might have been the last picture. Oh, and it doesn't want to. Okay. So thank you so much, my friend, for sending that. It just makes me love Morris more. And so Dee Marie asked the question, why this book? I don't know. Sometimes the books find me. That's not a very good answer. I would say, so Jill picked this book up not long ago, it was earlier last year. And I was jealous mostly because she got one that had this beautiful cover. It had this beautiful fabric cover. And I was like, sour grapes. But then one of her dealer friends had this book. And Jill mentioned something about it. And she said, well, do you want this one? And Jill was like, yeah, I bet Stephanie would like it. So she got this book from her friend. And I saw her friend at seminar and thanked her profusely because, good book. And so then right after she gave me the book, then that's when this one came across my desk, Empire of Cotton. And so looking at these two sitting there, I was like, I need to get into them. So that's really what it was about. And also kind of along the lines of my cotton experiment, which I've shown you guys lots of bits and pieces of it, but I haven't put together like the full expansive training lecture presentation, whatever it is going to be, because I feel like I didn't know stuff. And so Morris is teaching me along with you guys. All right, let's finish this chapter on England. And again, I apologize. I don't like reading the chapters in like halves because it's, I kind of want to hear a chapter at one time. So I'll try not to do this again. Although the next chapter is really long because it gets into like the Industrial Revolution. So as a reminder, we are reading The Heritage of Cotton by M.D.C. Crawford, aka Morris DeCamp Crawford. He wrote this book in 1924. And we are halfway through the chapter on England, which is chapter 8. So we are finishing chapter 8 on England. So I'm going to reread a little bit of it, just so you know where we're at. So it's going through the 1600s. So in 1671, 34,000 pieces of chintz were imported into England. You can remember, we've got some issues with the wool and silk people. So imports are, a little fraught. The pieces were only a few yards in length. In 1681, English merchants secured designs from Holland to be copied in India. It is rather curious to note, even at this time, the insistence upon originality and pattern. One letter contains the following passage: "Everyone desiring something that their neighbors have not the like." By 1683, the demand for calico was beyond all belief. It had become the style, and everyone wanted it. The following quotation from a letter to India: "You cannot imagine what a great number of the chintzes would sell here, they being the wear of gentlewomen in Holland. Make great provision of them beforehand. 200,000 of all sorts in a year will not be too much for this market, if the directions be punctually observed in the providing of them." Again, in 1686, this letter of interest: "You may exceed our former orders in chintz broad of all sorts, whereof some to be of grave and cloth colors, with the greatest variety you can invent, they being become the wear of ladies of the greatest quality, which they wear on the outside of gowns, mantuas, which they line with velvet and cloth of gold." I really wish they could have written a little bit more. You know what? We could just get ChatGPT to read that and be like, this is what they were saying. Because it's very odd. The writing of the 17th century. Okay. In 1700, the protests of the woolen manufacturers and sheep farmers of England forced Parliament to forbid the selling of cotton goods in England. And in 1712, a further act prohibiting the use of all printed goods, cotton or otherwise, was passed by Parliament. You guys remember this? MacIver Percival wrote all about this in the Chintz book. These laws were, however, not as efficacious as desired, for in 1721 a further act was passed imposing a fine of £5 on the wearer and £20 on the vendor of cotton goods. I don't know that I've ever heard that piece of the story, the actual cost, the fines. When the difference in money values between these times and the early 18th century are considered, it must be admitted that these fines were very serious matters. Yeah, 1821, £5. Yeah. That they affected the Indian market there can be no doubt. A letter to the governor and council at Fort St. George in 1704, 4 years after the passage of this first law, indicates this situation very clearly. "We are sorry we can give no great encouragement at present to the fine paintings which you are sensible is brought to great perfection with you. The chief expense, i.e. sale, of that commodity was in England, which now by the prohibition is taken away, and abroad they turn to no account." To show how vigorous was the protest of the British wool growers and their paid literary defenders, a quotation from a pamphlet, "The Ancient Trades of Decayed and Repaired Again." What? The ancient trades decayed and repaired again in 1678 is pertinent. This trade, meaning the woolen trade, is very much hindered by our own people who do not wear many foreign or who do wear many foreign commodities instead of our own. As may be instanced by many particulars, viz, I think that means vis-a-vis, instead of green say, S-E-Y, I can't remember what type of fabric that is, but green say that was wont to be used for children's frocks is now used in Indian stained and striped calico. And instead of a perpetuana or shalloon to line men's coats with, it is used sometimes a glazed calico, which in the whole is not above 12 pence. Cheaper and abundantly worse. And sometimes is used a Bengali that is brought from India both for lining to coats and for petticoats too. Yet our English wear is better and cheaper than this, only it is thinner for the summer. To remedy this, it would be necessary to lay a very high import upon all commodities as those are, and that no calicos or other sort of linen be suffered to be glazed. Glazoned. Glazoned. I think glazed works, but glazoned. A second pamphlet in 1696, The Naked Truth, in an essay upon trade. I like that. The Naked Truth runs as follows. The commodities that we chiefly receive from the East Indies are calicos, muslins, Indian silks, paper, saltpeter, indigo, etc. The advantage of these commodities is chiefly in their muslins and Indian silks, a great value in these commodities being comprehended in a small bulk, and these becoming the general wear in England. Fashion is truly termed a witch. The dearer and scarcer any commodity, the more the mode. 30 shillings a yard for muslins, and only the shadow of a commodity when procured. Even the great Defoe was induced to lend his genius to the vain attempt to stem the tide. He is, however, writing evidently at a time after the passage of the laws had, in measure, ameliorated the condition of the home manufacturers. The general fancy of the people runs upon East India goods to that degree that the chintz and painted calicos, which before were only made use of for carpets, quilts, etc., and to clothe children and ordinary people, become now the dress of our ladies. What was being used to clothe ordinary people? I mean, God forbid the ultra wealthy wear some janky t-shirt. So now become the dress of our ladies, and such is the power of a note as we saw our persons of quality dressed as Indian carpets, which but a few years before for chambermaids would have thought too ordinary for them. The chintz was advanced from lying upon their floors to their backs, from the footcloth to the petticoat, and even the queen herself at this time was pleased to appear in China and Japan. I mean China silks and calico. Nor was this all, but it crept into our houses, our closets and bedchambers, curtains, cushions, chairs, and at last beds themselves were nothing but calicos or Indian stuffs, and in short, almost everything that used to be made of wool or silk, relating either to the dress of women or the furniture of our houses, was supplied by the Indian trade. This is interesting because I feel like this, I don't think it was Defoe. I'm trying to remember. Remember the chinsel, you guys. I feel like that this is leading up to something very similar to that. So Maradim says the joke is on them. Poverty chic is now big among the wealthy. I know, right? If only I could sell them my husband's stained holy t-shirts for $80 a pop. Above half of the woolen manufacture was entirely lost, half of the people scattered and ruined, and by this intercourse of the East Indian trade. In France, equally broad-minded legislation had been passed at the instigation of the silk industry. Holland, however, had kept her ports open and did and did with both France and England, a highly profitable business in smuggled goods. Haha, it's all that smuggling. The British East India Company, as well, connived at its own particular brand of smuggling, and the English captains of vessels conducted a very profitable, if somewhat risky, trade. One author in a burst of prophetic eloquence sums up the situation neatly in the following phrases. Two things, says this writer, among us are too ungovernable, our passions and our fashions. Should I ask the ladies whether they would dress by law or clothe by act of parliament? They would ask me whether they were to be statute fools and to be made pageants and pictures of. They say they expect to do what they please, so they will wear what they please and dress how they please. Oh, God forbid. The fashionable ladies will wear what they want. With such moral support, in spite of all these laudable efforts on the part of British wool manufacturers and Parliament, the cotton trades could not be so discouraged but continued to increase. Dr. Stukely in 1724 describes Manchester as the largest and most prosperous village in England. 2,400 families were engaged in textiles, and there was not only trade with the rest of England, but the beginning of British export trade as well. Defoe, in 1727, mentions cotton manufacturing as the cause of the great prosperity of this town. Now, if you guys remember, the embargoes and the trade, the smuggling, all that stuff, even though I feel like England started, was producing its own, there was still drama. There was. Bolton was of somewhat less importance in this trade, but still a central marketplace where salesmen from Ireland on market days offered the linen warps spun in Belfast. Poverty chic. Cotton lint was given to the cottage spinners to be returned as yarn, which the merchants distributed to the weavers, and the cloth was brought in bolts on market days and sent out to be dyed, bleached, finished, and printed by the merchants who sought in Lancashire their supplies of these forbidden fabrics. George Crompton, the oldest son of the great inventor, born in 1781, describes as a child how he was employed in this manufacture. Oh gosh, I love stories about child labor. My mother used to bat the cotton on a wire riddle. It was then put into a deep brown mug with a strong lye of soap suds. My mother then tucked up my petticoats about my waist and put me in the tub to tread upon the cotton at the bottom. If you remember, you're probably going, well, some people are going, petticoat? I thought George Compton was a man. Yes. Was it I want to say it was like late 19th century when they stopped dressing children as little adults. I think it was sometime in the 1800s, where children ended up with outfits. Maybe it was after the Civil War. Anyway, late 1800s, where children were not just being put in tiny versions of adult clothes. They were actually put into child clothes. So at 1781, he would have been wearing a petticoat as a young boy. They would be wearing like a dress. So, and men today can't deal with that. So he's in the tub to tread upon the cotton at the bottom. When a second riddleful was batted, I was lifted out and it was placed in the mug, and again I trod it down. This process was continued until the mug became so full that I could no longer safely stand in it, when a chair was placed beside it and I held on to the back. Yes, they wore dresses until they were about 6. Yeah, I think, and then that's when boys would get like the short breeches, and they had those little suits. They were looking like little men. Yeah. When the mug was quite full, the soap suds were poured off and each separate dollop of wool well squeezed to free it from moisture. They were then placed on the broad rack under the beams of the kitchen loft to dry. My mother and my grandmother carded the cotton wool by hand, taking one of the dollops at a time on the simple hand cards. It's strange that they're washing it because, I don't know. I mean, this is just an interesting description. I mean, to me, this sounds like wool. Like they were felting wool. But I don't know why you would do that with cotton. Maybe we're going to find out. It's just, that seems like a very odd processing to do with cotton. Although maybe this is an important aspect of cotton spinning that I don't know about. So, I mean, I will definitely say, like, this could be an area of ignorance on my part, but okay, moving along. Maybe we'll find out. Yeah, I know raw cotton is called wool. I mean, they've, yeah, I mean, we've kind of come across that, but this putting it into this tub and then having this, you know, as a child, having him like stomp on it, that, I mean, that's the kind of stuff you do with like sheep wool to felt it. Cotton's not going to felt. To me, it just becomes like a big soppy mess, but I don't know. I mean, there's probably something to this that I just am not aware of because I'm not a spinner. So, okay. So prosperous and powerful did the cotton manufacturers in Lancashire become that in 1736 they had the law of 1721 amended so as to permit the manufacture of mixed calicos of cotton and linen in England. They agreed, however, with the wool growers and manufacturers that cottons of India should still be excluded. To go colonize a country and then tell them that you're not going to take their exports. Good job, guys. Good job. This exclusion of Indian goods seems to have been in a measure effective, for a few years later. The great actor David Garrick pleaded in a jocular vein with a friend in the custom house to permit the painted Indian bed curtains upon which Mrs. Garrick had her heart set to escape the clutches of the law. This statute, known as the Manchester Act, had an immediate effect upon the prosperity of the city. By 1750, there were 30,000 people in the Manchester and Bolton districts exclusively engaged in the manufacture of cotton goods. And by 1766, it was estimated that over 600,000 pounds worth of merchandise were manufactured in this region in a single year. That's a lot. I mean, let's see. Where they're talking about 2,400 families in Manchester in 1724. But set by 1750, we're talking like 30,000 people. That's a big difference from 2,400 families to 30,000 people in these two different localities. From 1750 on, the history of cotton in England is largely the history of the calico trade and of mechanical invention and the application of power to machinery. The cotton trade, however, preceded the era of invention and was in fact the chief cause which called it into existence. In 1719, in a pamphlet entitled The Weaver's True Case, appears the following comparison in the styles of cloths worn in England before and after the Great Cotton Invasion. The Great Cotton Invasion. The tree wool is coming. Let us cast our eyes backward 15 years, that is to say, to 1704, when the prohibition of calicos decorated in India had been in force for 4 years. And see with what commodities our womenkind were then clothed. We shall see that our women among the gentry were then clothed with fine English brocades and Venetians, our common traders' wives with slight silk damasks, our country farmers' wives and other good country dames with worsted damasks, flowered Russells, and flowered calamanicos, the meanest of them with plain worsted stuffs. Whereas now those of the first class are clothed with outlawed Indian chintz, those of the second with English and Dutch printed calicos, those of the third with ordinary calicos and printed linen, and those of the last with ordinary printed linen. I'm pretty sure there was a statement or quote or something like this in the chintz book. I remember this discussion of like, this is what they used to wear, this is what they're wearing now. Our really fancy ladies, it's all pirated, smuggled, black marketed, everything they're wearing. Contrast this passage with one which appears in the Gentleman's Magazine on March 14th, 1754, 18 years after the passage of the Act, which permitted the printing of calicos in Great Britain. Mr. Sedgwick, a very considerable wholesale trader in printed goods, had the honor to present Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, with a piece of English chintz of excellent workmanship printed on a British cotton, which being of our own manufacture, Her Royal Highness was pleased to say she was very glad we had arrived at so great a perfection in the art of printing, and that in her opinion it was preferable to any Indian chintz whatsoever, and would give orders to have it made up into a garment for Her Highness's own wear, as an encouragement to the labor and ingenuity of this country. That was one sentence, by the way. The great demand for all kinds of printed fabrics aroused the mechanical genius of England to discover more rapid methods of applying patterns. At first, carved wooden blocks were employed. This method has never been excelled in artistic value and is still in use. This method has never been excelled in artistic value and is still in use. This was followed by more intricately etched copper plates used in a press not unlike that used to print books. Both of these methods were intermittent and required too great a degree of hand labor. Finally, the idea of engraved copper cylinders was thought of, suggesting perhaps by the rollers used in making cotton rovings. This invention had an immense and immediate effect on the entire calico business in England and increased production enormously. It is believed that Charles Taylor and Thomas Walker printed from wooden rollers before, but in 1770, Thomas Bell, a Scotchman, today I guess we call them Scotsmen, a Scotchman, used the first engraved copper cylinders for this purpose. He is said to have sold his machine to the firm of Livesey, Hargreaves, Hall and Company about 1785, but this must have been an improved version of his older machine. The description of Bell's machine is as follows. A polished cylinder several feet in length, according to the width of the piece to be printed, and 3 or 4 inches in diameter, is engraved with a pattern round the whole of its circumference and from end to end. It is then placed horizontally in a press, and as it revolves, the lower part of the circumference passes through the coloring matter, which is then removed from the whole circumference of the cylinder, except the engraved pattern, by an elastic steel blade placed in contact with the cylinder. This was the forerunner of our modern printing machines. A piece of cloth may then be printed and dried in 1 or 2 minutes, which, by the old method, would have required the application of the block 448 times. Wow. In O'Brien's famous treatise on calico printing, written in 1789, he sagaciously comments upon the fact that the use of roller printing would tend to cheapen the once so desirable product. I'm trying to remember what sagacious means. I think it just means he's like criticizing, right? It's like a critical comment. What person would willingly give 5 or 6 shillings a yard if their very servants could have an imitation of, or what has nearly the effect, for 2 or 3? I feel like, shrewd. I'm sorry. Okay, sagacious would be shrewd. So yeah, I mean, it is a shrewd comment. It's a critical one though. So it's like, why should I pay 5 or 6 shillings for something that my servants can wear an imitation of for 2 or 3 shillings? Oh my God. The sumptuary laws and all this kind of stuff are, so irritating. During this period, when the calicos of India and the imitations in England were attracting the attention of merchants, craftsmen, and manufacturers, a small group of men were at work upon machines, which in the end changed the entire complexion of the cotton industry. I have reserved the consideration of this period for a separate chapter, and that is the chapter on England. And yes, chapter 9 is 18th century, the age of the machine. So, I may have to kind of work on my topics for when we get to that, because this is a pretty long one. So I'm going to make sure that we can kind of get it all in one round. So on Thursday, I thought we would have some fun, as if we don't already have fun. The other day, though, I was on Reddit, and I was like, you know what? I haven't read any Am I the A-holes lately on Reddit. So I did a quick search, and indeed, there are some new ones. Now, they're not always about quilts, but they are sometimes about sewing and crafting and things that, we definitely can relate to. So I did find a bunch of them. And so I asked Jill if she would come on Thursday. And so we're going to do an Am I the A-hole crafting and sewing edition on Thursday. So I may have to do a different reading just because I think that this chapter is going to take more than what I usually give, like an hour or so. So we'll see. But please definitely join us on Thursday for some Am I the A-hole? Because I love to hear you guys' take on things. Most of the time you agree with me. Although I feel like last time when I said I didn't know if I had such an issue with somebody cutting pizza with the fabric scissors. I think a few of you may have disowned me. So we'll have fun with that. If you haven't already, be sure that you go vote on the cult name. Yeah, it's so funny. I actually watch there's a couple of YouTube channels that do Am I the A-hole really well. And I'll watch those occasionally just because they're just such drama. And I mean, my gosh, the things that people will write in about, and I got to be honest, I think sometimes they're fake. They're just stories people made up just because they want some attention and they want to hear what people say about them. But some of them you really get the impression that this is real. This really happened, and this person is deluded. They either cannot see from what they've just described that indeed they are a total butthole, or that they are being treated really badly and they're being told by other people like you're wrong, and so they put their story online and everybody is like, what are you talking about? Of course you're right. These people are gaslighting you, friend. So I love to look at those and just feel like, oh, it makes me feel better about myself. So there's your being a human hack for the week is search out things like Am I the A-hole to make yourself feel better, to just know that you're a better human being. That's your tip for the day. All right, guys, I am going to move on to my next thing. I have bit off more than I can chew already, and it is only January 6th. And you guys know I gave the 4 giant topics I'm working on this year, and already they've taken on a life of their own. And I don't have time to dilly-dally anymore. So, you guys, I'm going to need you guys to peer pressure me, keep me honest. So, I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you'll join me and Jill tomorrow. She and I kind of talked about what we're going to present, but we'll definitely be giving the assignment for our next book if you are going to read along with this. And I really, really recommend this one. It's called The Dress Diary of Mrs. Anne Sykes, and Secrets from a Victorian Woman's Wardrobe. It's by Kate Strasden. It's looking really good. And my mom has just gotten it, and she flipped through it and she's like, oh, it's going to be so great. So I hope you'll join us. And if not, I will see you on Thursday. And it's, as always, it's so great to see you guys. And I couldn't do this without you. So thank you for being here and for humoring me and my crazy ideas and just for being all around wonderful, wonderful friends. So you have a great week, and I will see you soon. Mwah! Bye, guys.